Hello, and you're all very welcome to Along the Line, brought to you by CK Stream. Well, after the great reaction to Nicky English last week, we're staying in 2001 with our down memory lane slot, and we'll be getting the memories of the man who captained Tip to that success, 2001 Hurler of the Year, Tommy Dunne. And one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time, Brendan Cummins, will also be joining us. I'm joined once again by Sean Matter. Sean, we had a great reaction to Nicky last week. Looking forward to Tommy and Brendan coming up in a while to get their views.
Yeah, it was a great show with Nicky. He's a great man to speak, and he had great ideas about that year. And it was a great listen to. And coming up now, Tommy and Brendan, there'll be two great listens there as well. Like Tommy had probably one of his best years, winning Hurler of the Year and captain of Tip. And then Brendan, of course, one of the best goalkeepers ever to lace it up. So they had to be a great listen to now, and hopefully hear their sides of what it was like in that year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting now compared to a manager's point of view to get the player's point of view, and will there be much of a difference between them?
Yeah, definitely. There's going to be differences there. Like managing and playing is completely different mindsets coming into it, and it'll just be interesting to see what their take of that year was, because it's easy for Nicky to tell his side of the story, but as soon as you cross the line, it's a different mindset coming into it. So yeah, we'll just wait and see now what they say, and it'll be a good listen to know.
Yeah, well, we're certainly getting great reaction to Nicky's interview there last week, and the 91 teams as well. So hopefully now Tommy and Brendan will have some great stories. Just touching last Saturday night, the All-Star Camogie was named, and great night for Tip, the three All-Stars on us.
Yeah, great night for Tip. Yeah, the three girls is a great honour, and to see them getting the All Stars, like it's for like Tip, it just shows the improvement that the Tip Camogie it's coming on. Like it's getting three All Stars. It's just a push on. Like Sharon and the goal, she made great saves throughout the year, and then Mary, she ever since she started hurling for Tip, she's always like, every minute of the game she's played nothing but pure honest hurling. And then Karen, then she scored a goal in the quarter-finals. So yeah, it's just great to see the three girls on it there now, and hopefully next year now we'll be striving for more and All Ireland success.
Yeah, because they're not too far away. Like, they'll get to that semi-final every year for the last few years. It's only a matter of breaking down that door and getting through and making the breakthrough to the final.
Yeah, definitely. They're well and capable of winning, going the whole way. Like, it's just narrow defeats here and there. But absolutely, it's well in their locker to go on and win the All Ireland now. They have the great players and great management. They seem to be gelling together now, so I can see them win the All Ireland now in the next year or two. Like, just everything going to plan with them.
Yeah, and just an interesting stat there with Mary Ryan. It's Moneygall's second Camogie All-Star. Julie Curran was the first, and she had it for the exact same position as well, left corner back. And Julie gave great service to Tip there as well down through the years.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, it just shows it must be a Moneygall thing. They always bring great backs. So it's great to see Mary then follow on in her footsteps, winning the exact same position. It just shows the character of them to not only play in the same position, but to win an All-Star in the same position. So it's a great feat for Moneygall, like, and it's a great feat for Tip.
Yeah, well, we wish them the very best for the rest of the year now when they get back into the field, and hopefully we'll be talking about a lot more All-Stars later on in the year with a couple of All-Ireland medals as well. Well, we're going down memory lane again, and after getting the thoughts of manager Nicky English last week, this week we're staying in 2001 and getting the perspective from the players, and I'm delighted to say that joining us here along the line is Tipperary's All-Ireland winning captain from 2001, the legend that is Tommy Dunne, and 5-time All-Star and 2-time All-Ireland medal winner Brendan Cummins. Lads, you're very welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Ross.
Tommy, 20 years. Suppose from your own personal point of view, it must have been very satisfying captaining that team as well.
Yeah, no, it was. Well, the first thing to say is I can't believe it's 20 years, right? That's the first thing. It's very strange to be sitting here looking back 20 years later. But I suppose the good side of it is we're still here, and it's good to be still here and be able to look back on it, and still brings a smile to my face every time I do. So was great. It was a great year and a great win, and one that was, well, when you're involved in those kind of things, they tend to stick with you, don't they, for as long as you're around. And that's the case. Seldom a day passes or a week passes that someone doesn't bring it up somewhere along the line that you meet. You know what I mean? And it's never too far from your thoughts. Such a great day on the day to win it playing well. You know what I mean? Team playing well in a tight game, and it was very, very satisfying. Definitely very satisfying. And for likes of myself, I was 27 at the time, Brendan 25 or 26, and we'd been around. Been around a good few years, and it meant a lot. That one definitely meant a lot.
Yeah, Brendan, satisfying for you as well. Plenty of top class saves that year that kept Tip in at a certain status.
I don't know. Yeah, just like Tommy said, it ended up being nearly the perfect year for us. We got momentum. I think we hadn't lost any game that year. I think we played Limerick above Nina and drew them by a point. But we seem to have galvanised under Nicky since he took over in '99. It was the third year of the journey, and we all reckoned, like Tommy said, I was fed up of being named in teams that hadn't won All Ireland medals. So with that lad there in the corner driving us on and making sure we went to the cones, we set high standards and we just followed it through all the way. And I think the Wexford game was probably the one where we got out of jail. I certainly had a brutal day that day. I think we all kind of got froze. We got out of jail and didn't look back after that. I remember going back down the bus and we were listed a Galway and Kilkenny game, and we found out it was Galway, and we just gave ourselves a huge chance. And when you win constantly throughout the year, like Tommy said, and you get momentum, then you can't really see yourself getting bet. And it was really, really special. And like Tommy said, I'm no different. There's times when life gets a little bit tricky. You go back to that last puck out I had before Pat O'Connor blew the final whistle, and the world just seems like a better place for those few minutes while your head's in that space. Like, it's great memories to have.
Yeah, Tommy, we were talking to Nicky, and I suppose the first real marker you put down that year was the draw in Kilkenny in the league.
Yeah, I suppose when you look back on things, like things don't happen by chance. Like when I think back on 2001 in kind of broader terms, like I feel we had a lot of important work done in Nicky's first 2 years. As Brendan said, it was Nicky and the management's third year involved, and I think 99 and 2000 definitely contributed to the season we had in 2001. The Waterford Bristol tournament, I think, was still played actually. I think we won that as well. We were for the year, maybe won the National League and had a very tight squeeze against Clare in the first round in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where we won by a point, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And that was a knockout game. Like the early rounds in Munster in those days were still knockout. If you got to the Munster final, you were okay, but before that, if you lost, you were gone. So, and like the rivalry between ourselves and Clare was still very, very strong, and Clare were still a formidable team. So, but yeah, had a good league campaign, had a good tussle with Kilkelly early in the league, and won the National League. And we had a good, we were very fit. We were very fit. We were very strong. We were nicely experienced, and we had blooded a couple of youngsters as well, like Owen. I think that was Owen's. Well, he was on the squad in 2000, but his first year probably playing regularly. Lara Corbett was the year he really made a mark on the team as well, and which galvanised us. You know what I mean? So we were definitely on a mission. And in those days, winning the league was often seen as a sort of could be seen nearly as a negative, that you were nearly peaking too early. But we definitely had plenty in the tank even after winning the league. And I think that was the age profile of the team was good. You know what I mean? Like Declan was the oldest, who was a crucial member of the team. So we had a great mix of experience, middle-aged players, and then a couple of the younger guys that were really starting to develop and had pace and energy and hunger and had no baggage. You know what I mean? So the things, from that point of view, our profile was good, and there was a lot of quality in the team. You know what I mean? A lot of quality in the team, and we had obviously a great management team, and so we were well set up for it. But we had a few setbacks along the way as well. Like Johnny did his cruciate against Clare after coming on, and that was a serious setback. You know, like Johnny was still a formidable player. And losing him that day was definitely a heavy blow. You know what I mean? A heavy blow for the whole group, and not least for himself, obviously. But we recovered well enough, and drove on and had a very tight. Munster final was a very tight game. Really, really tight in a sweltering hot day in Porky. So we definitely got a bit of luck along the way. But you know, looking back, I thought we definitely had a very solid season. Like.
Yeah, Brendan, obviously after getting over the league and playing Clare again 4 weeks later, the mood obviously good in the camp going into that Clare game.
Yeah, it was very positive. I think Nicky, if memory serves me correct, after we won the cup, he came in and I think he caught the cup and it ended up just above on the rack over where you put your gear. And he said, that means nothing. 3 weeks' time is what we want. And that was shots fired, I think, straight away. And we all had seen, like Tommy said, that it was year 3 of the project and we needed to make a breakthrough. We need to make a statement. And Clare were the big dogs and the benchmark back then. They'd always been our nemesis. The games below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh were red hot, whether it was the weather or whether it was the tension in the air. But you just knew when I followed Tommy out through the tunnel in the dark out into the light there, when Tommy vaulted that stile there in the front, and I thought to myself, I have to bloody jump it now as well. He's after going over the damn thing. So, and actually, I don't know what Tommy remembered. I remember very clearly. We came out of that dressing room. We did our warm-up inside in the gym. And I remember Nicky putting a symbol on the ball and he handed it to me. And he said, a tip man will handle that first puck out when you hit this out. Tommy went out through the door. I won't say he went out. It had to become off the hinges. But you know the way people funnel in that time?
Yeah.
Tommy out and he knocked about 2 people. They
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, you hit a couple of because they put their hand out. Come on, Tip, you know this thing. And we were all so focused. And that was Nicky's genius, I suppose. Which
it was a brilliant touch, wasn't it? Jeez, I don't remember you telling that story before. That's amazing. Yeah, that's a great. He had a way of getting you at the right time, like, hadn't he? You know, he was. And
it was that. It was. I think looking back in it now, when you'll be in charge of teams, Tommy, since. You'd want to have a focus, not an emotional explosion. Yeah. And he narrowed the focus of the group down to the ball.
Yeah.
And it just meant you were focused on the ball. Before we left, that was the last subconscious message he gave us.
Yeah. He kind of had a way to get us playing to our strengths when the pressure was on, and the ball, you know, playing the ball was our strength. Like, you know, we had that over Clare a little bit. We were good ball players. And geez, you know, it's only when you remember Páirc Uí Chaoimh and the whole drama, you could nearly say, of the dressing rooms and getting out onto the pitch. Like it's only when you bring it back. Like, I remember vividly now, the dressing room to the pitch was lethal. It was jammed with people. And if the guards weren't there, like usually the guards that have it sectioned off so they'd clear that 10 meter or whatever it was. But like, you were right, it was chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But Jesus, the atmosphere in the place was like nothing you've ever experienced. Like, it was remarkable stuff. Like, it was incredible. Like, the atmosphere in those days for knockout hurling was off the wall. Like, I remember in '99. Do you remember '99 against Clare and games in Cork? Like, I'll never forget the noise. I'll never forget the noise in the dressing room and the noise overhead you and the heat. Like, 'twas. At the time, it was chaos, and you were going, "What the name of God is happening here?"
It was real gladiator.
Back on it, and you realise how much part of the journey all that was, and the privilege of being in that place with people that you went on to win with. You know what I mean? Like, it was like we're like incredibly lucky, and it's lovely. Like, it's lovely to be sitting here and remembering it, like with yourselves and all the lads, because like they're the things that make a team. Like they're the things that tighten friendships, and you know, that team had that. Like, we had a good bond, you know what I mean, even though the 20 years have passed. Like, but Jesus, like those fellas were like brothers, you know.
Well, and like in fairness, when we were in that dressing room as well, when we moved from the dressing room up to the gym, no toilets. Remember the blue bar in the corner?
Chief, Mary and Joseph
It
stuff.
was absolutely reckless, like. But you wouldn't, like nowadays. People would say, and this sounds like a real old man talking here, so indulge us for a second, right? But it was the steam, the heat, the pressure. You hated Clare. You respected what they were, which is animals with hurleys, and they had set the benchmark and they'd beaten you before. And then you look out in the corner and there's 3 or 4 lads huddled around the bin trying to get rid of the pressure and the tension that's in their bodies, and then they come back in again. But it was just, it was fantastic time.
Powerful stuff. Like, it's powerful, you know, incredible, really.
Yeah, Brendan, I suppose the first little psychological blow that Nicky had in his armour that day, you actually had the gold jersey on, and knowing that you were going to be asked to change it into the white one. And Nicky then looked for Davy for his jersey to be changed because it clashed with the tip one. Now, Davy was not too pleased over it, but he still goes on about it to the day. But it was only a small little thing, but it got into Clare's head straight away from the start.
But absolutely it did, yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that all started from the year before when we had the drawing game and the replay, or the drawing game below in Páirc Keeve in 2000. I wore an all-white jersey. And some lads who were complaining about the bad puck out said they couldn't recognise me from the umpires. So they were giving out about that. So we had to design a different white jersey so the boys out the field wouldn't think I was an umpire pucking out the ball. And of course, Nicky being Nicky then used it to get under Davy's skin. And he made him change and made him switch. And sure, anything you could do then, because Loughnane was prowling up and down the sideline, and he was the master of psychological warfare. So any bit of an up you could get against him was always going to be taken. And fairness to Nicky, he had some experience, and that was again part of his genius, that he could subtly disrupt the opposition, and that was, I suppose, another one of his ways of going about it.
Yeah, Tommy, just before throwing, you could see like Brian Quinn was going on to Larry and Brian on Owen Kelly and Tobin Niglin, and we all know what happened with Mark O'Leary and Jerry Quinn, and Shawty McMahon was at Eddie Enright. But from the throw-in, Colin Lynch had pulled, and you turned back, and like you were happy enough to give away the free, but it was probably a sign that you weren't going to be pushed around.
Yeah. I didn't realise we were going into that sort of detail tonight, because
you're safe now. You're not getting a red card now. You're safe.
It's okay for the Sunday game analyst there. He's in that sort of detail every week. But well, listen, like, you know, you never know whether it's the right thing to do. Like, but like if Clare thought they could bully you, then you know the game was over before it started. So one thing we were fairly sure of was that whatever was going to happen, they weren't going to bully us around. You know what I mean? So whatever had to be done at that moment in time, you kind of did it. You did what felt right at the time. I'm not saying it was the right thing to do, but that's what happened. And in those days, you know, was Dickie Murphy ref on that? I think Dickie was right. Like, you know, it's like you could get away with a fair bit, like, you know, you could, and did, and particularly early in the game, we want to be fairly bad before you pick up a straight red early on in the game. Like what you were conscious of was that you'd have your card marked that you'd have to watch yourself for the rest of the game. But in fairness to Dickie, he, you know, to want to be fairly bad before you'd end up sitting outside. You know what I mean? So, like that was kind of in the mix as well.
Yeah, so Mark O'Leary had to pick up the yellow card for you, so because he was fairly man-handed underneath the public stand.
Yeah, well, like the thing about it was, like, if anyone, you know, like I don't know how many cameras were at the match, and I don't know if it was caught on camera, but I saw it like as clear as day. Like what happened there was completely out of line. So like it was crazy, but you just got on with it. You know what I mean? Like it didn't do us any harm in the long run. Didn't do Mark any harm. Didn't do the team any harm. Like we knew what was coming. All right.
Yeah, I suppose Owen Kelly getting a point straight away. Corcoran gave him a lovely ball in, and obviously he'd come on the year before, but that would have settled him down even at that stage.
Yeah, like Owen, like it was like Owen had a terrific game that day for a guy starting his first championship match and that pressure. Like, do you remember the belt he got from Baker that he got turned upside down, got down, bounced up again? Sure, that typified the mood, really. You know what I mean? Like, Owen was only a chap; he's only barely out of 18, facing into that like against a Clare backline that were as good as what was around. So like Owen had a super, like couldn't speak highly enough of the quality of game that Owen had that day and the pressure that was there. But Declan was a hugely important part of that forward line, in fairness, you know what I mean? And I don't think Owen or Lar could have flourished as well as they did without the experience of Declan in particular. And like we obviously had Eddie, Eddie played at 11 that day, and like Eddie was a tremendous player, like absolutely class player, very, very much an underrated player, and had a terrific season that season.
I think there's a very good picture actually of Big Deck with his arms around Owen and Larry.
That's right, yeah.
And it was really a bit like Mick Galway with the stringer.
Just going to say, absolutely.
That's it. And Tommy spoke about it earlier on about the maturity we had. Like Declan, I think only barked once that year, and I remember it clearly. Stopping training, went down to the corner where the down at the town side, we'll say near the new or the old stand, to go into a circle because the standards weren't good enough. And I'll never forget it because it's the only time Declan ever intervened in the training session. But he knew when to talk and he knew when to play, and he played all the time and he talked very seldom. But he was like, even the last three we got that day, I remember looking up and all I saw was Declan doing this and he pointing towards the corner flag. And I had to look again to say, because if Declan pointed, there was something you had to do.
No, absolutely.
Boy, God help you. So I got it up in the corner and he caused a row up there and we ended up. I think Dickie blew it up a minute and a half early. Clare were going mental, but that was it, and we were out the gap.
That was a huge game. That was a huge game for us to win. Obviously, but like that was a crossroads game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because Brendan, obviously it was nip and tuck the whole game. Like Colin Lynch had the chance just before half time, but even after John Leahy came on and got injured, there seemed to be now a fear that came into the crowds. I know it did personally, of losing even after you went 3 points up, and it was real tense atmosphere in Cork. Now we asked Nicky the same question, but he wasn't really sure on the answer. But what that has seeped into the players on the field, that fear of losing?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so in that year. I think we had decided that all the work was done. We just had to play and finish the job, with probably what we'd have been thinking in our heads. Like Clare were no mugs. Like you're never going to go out and beat Clare by 6 or 7 points. And if you think of the journey we had before, like we played them in '99, Druid and Davy got the goal to get them to draw. They bit the life out of us in the replay. Then you take it on to 2000, beaten again. So like we knew like that this was red, like knockout hurling, like. And if we were bet there for a lot of us, you were throwing your hands up in the air. Nicky, the best manager, as a player when you have a good manager. You just know it, and you know the time is now because you mightn't get a fella as good again. And that time was there for us. And we had tension. Of course we had. It was never going to be a cakewalk against Clare. They were dogged, and they'd unbelievable hurlers as well. So it was always going to be down to the wire. But we won a tight match, and that's something people would have levelled against us, that we couldn't do that. But we did it, and we backed ourselves to do it. So while in the stand you're eating your fingers and going mad, I never really had any doubt in 2001 in any game that we were going to lose, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I suppose, Tommy, as Brendan was saying there in the stand, but I suppose the experience in '99, that's what had the supporters the way they were like.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I probably didn't look at it from maybe the supporters' point of view, but yeah, '99 was a game that we'd have considered we should have won the first day probably, So, but like Brendan said, like Clare and ourselves in those times, there was a lot going on, and you were never really going to shake them off too handy, in fairness. And that game could have went either way, right till the very end. But like Brendan said, I'm the same. I still never any fear of us not been at the right side of it. I think, okay, maybe a draw wouldn't have been a surprise, but like we were, won't say in charge of it, but we were more than holding our own. I felt all the way through that game, and probably if there wasn't so much baggage between the two teams, we might have won it by a bit more. But like, what was it, 15-14 or 16-15 or something like that? Like, it was a very low scoring game. There was a lot, there was a lot at stake for both teams.
Yeah, going on to the Munster final, Brendan, obviously playing Limerick, they were on a high after the two matches against Cork and Waterford. Another baker of a day down there that day as well.
Yeah, it was roasting. I normally at the time I was wearing the United t-shirt, a United jersey and a Tipperary a jersey, but I binged the United t-shirt for that game. It was the first time I'd ever done that. It was sweltering down there. And I remember even just after walking around the parade, the sweat would be dropping off you. And it was my first real chance of winning a Munster final. Like, I'd been in it in 96 and we'd drawn against Limerick. And I didn't really understand it, to be honest with you, because it was my first couple of years in and I didn't really get it, right? But certainly I just felt it was time again to chalk this one down, that Munster final is what you're going to win now and get going. I remember looking through the bodies and seeing Brian O'Mara get the ball and set sail. And when he got the goal, then I remember them getting one back. But again, we were back to the scene of the crime against Clare. We were back into that mode of we play in Páirc Keeve and we win tight matches. And we had enough in the finish. I think it was Jono got a couple of points in the finish to finish off Limerick. It's mad because it was Paddy, I think, later on in the final. But we had a bench as well that was able to come on to do things for us, to give us that extra bit of a push. And we certainly used it that day and later on in the year. So, yeah, sweltering heat, Limerick very, very good. But I couldn't see us losing, to be honest with you. Looking back in at the frame of mind, certainly I was in and colleagues around me, we were just ready to win something, and that was that.
Yeah, because you started on fire that day, Tommy. I think the first 7 shots, or the first 8 shots, 7 of them were scores.
Yeah.
You were 6-2 up before, and you were 6-2 up and 6 different scores. Yeah. And obviously Limerick came back into it. Ollie Moore started getting on top. Did Shawnee O'Connor nipped in for the goal.
Shawnee O'Connor, yeah, good player as well, yeah.
A name that hadn't been heard of before the Munster final.
Yeah, no, we had, no, you're right, and it's my memories of too. I also remember, obviously, the weather was incredible. Like, well, we started the game ground going well. Declan, I remember Paul, and I remember Paul coming out with a couple of great balls near the end of the game. So, but like very tight. But like that was Munster Championship hurling. You were kind of used to it. You know what I mean? You knew it was going to be tight, and I thought our composure was fairly good. And like Brendan said, the time had come for that team to start getting across the line, and it kind of felt. I don't remember any huge big elation really afterwards, which was strange for, like, it was our first Munster final win for a few. Like, it was really, really good, but we kind of knew we were going somewhere, I suppose.
Yeah, Brendan, like, Philip Maher was unbelievable in the Munster semi-final, and again the Munster final. Must have been a joy to have somebody like him in front of you.
Look, like, throughout my career with Tipperary, like, I'd Noel Sheehy in front of me, I'd Philip Maher and Paul Curran, probably the 3 best fullbacks Tipperary would have ever had. I was privileged to play behind him. Philip Maher was just immense, because for a man so big, he used to thunder out to the ball. Like, when you're that close to him, you can hear the thud of his feet off of the ground. No slow down, no fear, no danger, just go. And the first touch into the hand then, and then the clearance. And sometimes, like at the start when I played behind him, my heart's in my mouth going, oh, geez, he's going to run over this. And I go over off my line a little bit, and I see everything that could go wrong, like, obviously. But very, very seldom, if never, did it happen to Philly. And it actually spooked every full-back he played, or full forward he played on. And he played on some fairly serious lads now, you know, and he just went for it. The very minute the ball broke inside the half-back line, Philly was gone. And we had a great communication between us as well. Like, if the ball was coming in high, he'd made me under no illusions that he'd give everybody out, and it was mine all day long. And that's the way we operated. So there was no grey area of I might catch it or you might catch it. It was, I'll hold him out, and I'll drop my hurley, you catch it, and I'll make sure he doesn't hit it. And that was the deal, and that's the way we work. So it was fantastic to have him in front of me. There's absolutely no doubt about that. A gentleman and a fantastic fullback, unbelievable.
Yeah, Tommy. Obviously, he's a quiet man in that now. We've known him personally, and he doesn't seem to be much of a talker. But what would he be like in the dressing?
No, he was good character, all right. Yeah, don't be fooled by that profile now. Like Brendan will tell you, if there was crack to be had, Philly be in the middle of it. Like, to be, in fairness, to be if there was someone getting slagged, there'd be a good chance Philly would be slagging him, right? That so. But an excellent, very understated. But like Brendan, he was a brilliant all round player. He had a brilliant hurler. Like anyone that had seen him hurling for Boris all through the years. Like his all-round game would be terrific. And he had, as Brendan pointed out really well there, like he had one of his trademarks was his acceleration. He was a great man to attack the ball. And like for, what was he, 15 or 16 stone, like, and was quick. He was a powerful player. Yeah, he was great. And we had when you look back through that team, like we had a lot of quality throughout the team. Understated, but a lot of quality, Kendi at centre back was becoming very established at that time, and the team was very settled as well, particularly around the back line, which is really, really important. Like Philly rarely got injured; he was always playing. Kendi the same, rarely injured, nearly always playing. Costello and Paul really settled in, and didn't get a lot of credit for what they did, but what they did really well. I thought like Ormond did a great job on Joe Rabbit, like in the All Ireland final, and had some tricky customers to deal with up along as well. So that was a feature outside of Johnny's injury, and obviously Brian's suspension. Like we had a fairly settled outfit all the way through the year. So and we knew our game. We knew our game really, really well. Like we had fierce kind of belief in each other without maybe explicitly saying that all the time. But, you always could nearly expect what was going to happen from different people when they were on the ball. Yeah,
Brendan, just like talking about leaders and that, like the likes of Tomás Costello and Eugene O'Neill, I know 2 Kappa White men, and like we covered a lot of under 14 games for Kappa White last year. And the 2 boys were in charge of him. And even at under 14 level, their astuteness, every little detail that they had. Now, obviously, they're up with the Kappa White intermediates this year. So, were they seen as leaders back then?
They were, and actually, they beat poor old Ballybacon Grange in extra time. My poor old Craters in the under 14 county semi final above in Bancha. By Eugene coming across the field. Well, great game, lads. Eugene, you know what I mean? Tommy, you'll appreciate that, And Tom Costello gave his All-Ireland speech after. Unbelievable, wanted unbelievable. I can't believe it, you know what I mean? So, yeah, they were. And to be fair, the week of the All-Ireland final, I was asked to, I don't know what it was, for a programme or something on some paper anyway, to give a kind of a pen picture of all the players. So I had the 2 boys down as Kappa late anyway, because every night at training they were nearly last in the door. So
yeah,
I'm going to out myself on that one for 20 years.
They found it hard to be on time. In fairness, they were cool out.
But Costello, like, and Eugene, like, were just, they're very unassuming. And when we spoke earlier about the calmness that was over the team, that when the people in the terrace were getting worried, I was never really that worried because the boys were so calm about it. Like, they were just playing the game of hurling, like, and they were going to do their max, and they knew that'd be good enough. And Costello was kind of like that at cornerback. Yeah. The only time I saw Tom getting nervous was the day of the All-Ireland final. I had to go out to him after 3 or 4 minutes. I could see him; he was shaking out a small bit. And I said, "Look, this is no different," I said, "than what we do in Thurles every night at training. Stick tight to him and don't give him a puck," I said. And after 70 minutes, we'll see what happens. I said, right. Okay, grand. And that was it. And he went about his business. So there was never any really fuss with the Kappa White boys. Like Eugene, Mark O'Leary, apparently, Tommy, or what you call it, Hot Point told me this story of Eugene. And he had, Mark O'Leary got the ball and he drove it, of course, a mile wide as it happened, and Eugene was calling for it. And of course, Eugene turned around. No need for it, Mark. No need for it. And that kind of thing, And that was No, and that's the way they played, like the way they hurled with Kappa. They just happy-go-lucky, no fuss, no panic, just play away.
But Eugene had a great semi-final against Wexford, like in horrendous. Like Eugene was a brilliant hurler. You know, Eugene played in the All Ireland final in 1997 on Brian Lohan or Frank Lohan, and Eugene was a class player on his when he had his A game, he was a class player, a really, really class player. I suffered a bit with injuries, obviously, and different things probably, but a brilliant player, a brilliant player.
Yeah, obviously getting over the Munster final, but looking at the All Ireland semi-final, and we said it to Nicky as well, the one thing we hate is when Tipper line in the long grass, because you had 5 weeks and nobody knew what was going on, and sure, obviously the rumour mill goes into overdrive, and 99.9% of the time there's no truth in it, and that's Nicky's going changing around the team, and was all that we were hearing, and he named the same team as the Munster final. And then just as the ball is thrown in, there's 4 positional changes. So there was a bit of truth in it, but it obviously upset Wexford from the start, especially John Carroll going up centre forward.
Yeah, it's funny the way things, I suppose, transpire, but that ended up turning into be a really positive change, I suppose, to some extent. You know what I mean? I don't remember too much about the delay between the Munster final and the semi-final. I do remember being very cagey or worried about, not so much worried, but it was very, very apprehensive maybe about the first game against Wexford. We kind of felt that we were definitely had the measure of them, but there was a bit of an unknown quantity for us about Wexford, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? And they were pretty much underdogs as well, and had a fair bit of experience in their ranks and a fair bit of quality. So, and a very astute manager. So, the game was bizarre then, though, really, wasn't it? Like a game that we had control of, and where they came into it from kind of nowhere, and it kind of get the feeling we were happy enough to get the draw and get out of there that day. That's kind of my recollection of it. It's a game we could easily have lost, that sort of way, even though we mightn't have really deserved to lose it. We didn't play all that badly, but we weren't anywhere like as smooth as we were in the Munster Championship either. So that's my memory. That could be just, that could be the way I remember it. I'm not saying that's exactly the way it was, but that's just kind of the way I remember it around that time. I don't know if Brendan shares some of that or maybe even disagrees with some of it.
No, you're 100% right. It's probably one of the worst games I ever had for Tipperary. Larry O'Gorman, every time I meet him, tells me about the one he whizzed over my shoulder into the Hill 16 end. We were jumpy. I was jumpy. I don't know what it was. Was it that with the 5-week delay had probably something to do with it? It was the first time we'd that length of a gap. But certainly we were jumpy. I remember talking to the umpires. There's about 15 minutes left. I think we were 5 or 6 points up, and the umpire said to me, "Look, there's 15 minutes left there, Brendan." He said, "You're going well." He couldn't really sense off me I was jumpy, And I remember going out to Philly Marr a couple of times, even during that game, saying, "Are you all right?" And he was saying, "Are you all right?" And we did more talking to each other that day than we'd ever done really in a game, about reassuring each other about it'll be okay, we'll get through the next 5 minutes, kind of stuff, like a counselling session. And I remember the last puck out I had, they were after getting within a point of us. And I remember going back behind the goals to puck it out, and the umpire said to me, "You better hope he blows it up," he said, "because you're in big bother here." And he was right, And I remember after the equaliser, I pucked out the ball, and I think Mitch Jordan got on it, and the ref blew full time. And I was never as relieved to get off a field in all my life as that day. It was, Jesus, I'll never forget it now. We were blessed to get out of that one. Absolutely blessed, because Wexford are a crowd that at the time, if they used to play in Kilkenny, and they were used to being 6 or 7 points down and not being overly worried about it. They didn't seem to bother them that we got maybe 1-2 or 1-3 of a start. They just kept hurling away. But anyway, look, either way, that game against Wexford was the biggest get out of jail card I think that I've ever had to play. And happy that we got it. Yeah. The fact.
Yeah, I think Tommy, it came in after that where when it was the injury time or the additional time was to be announced, it'd be a minimum. I think it was 4 minutes or something that day, and he played maybe 3.5 when Mitch Jordan had the ball. Wexford went mad over. That was the first.
Right.
But
No, they definitely had us on the rack a little bit. You know what I mean? Games like that are funny. Like, very hard to turn them back in your favor, particularly when the clock is against you. And they did have us on the rack a little bit. But at the same time, you know, we got a result, and we kind of felt. You know, we definitely learned a bit out of it, I'd say, in fairness. You know what I mean? We definitely had we were definitely a different outfit the next day, definitely. And we took more out of it than they did probably for the replay.
Yeah, because the killing thing about it is, Brendan, that you probably should have been outside at half time. Like, Damien Fitzhenry pulled off 4 outstanding saves in the first half.
Yeah, I'd be kind of used to doing that, all right, about Damien. There's no doubt about that. But they relied heavily on him, but again, only to get him through the storm. And that was the weird thing about Wexford then. Like, never really panicked, you know, like they just hurled away, like, and it was like they were playing without really looking at the scoreboard. And eventually, point after point after point, they just came back into the game. I remember Fenlon and Larry in the middle of the field, like Larry Murphy, these lads, like, they were serious players. Like Mitch Jordan at that stage was having an unbelievable year as well. So they were at the peak of their power as well. And maybe we looked at Wexford over the years and the success they'd have had would have been limited enough, I suppose. And suddenly, like you'd have said, you might be able to beat these lads. I don't think we had that complacency. Maybe the supporters had, but we got one hell of a fright that day anyway, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, Tommy, Nicky was actually saying that going back and doing the recovery straight away and juries after the game probably helped you ready for the following weekend.
It did, yeah, it did. We got into the pool there fairly quickly, and it felt like we'd moved on fairly quickly, and it felt like we were kind of in preparation mode very quickly again that evening. I think the replay was the following Saturday, like, so we didn't have time, and we used every minute of it fairly well, and definitely we were happy to get out that day. And, you know, in a way the gloss was kind of gone off us, you know what I mean? There was a bit more of point to prove with us again, you know what I mean? Like, we'd probably been talked up a little bit after the Munster final going up, so it actually suited us to come in a little bit hurt into the replay. And replay obviously was a different ball game.
Yeah, it was horrible conditions that day for the replay, Brendan.
Yeah, it was. It was one of those days you didn't even know it was raining, because I remember going into that game angry as hell, because I was after having a right good year, and I had in my own head let myself down and everybody else down the previous Sunday by maybe getting a little bit above my station, thinking I'd arrived and thinking that I'd be able to play in the goals and just plug myself in and do all these mad things. So I remember being in Thurles, went up by train that lunchtime for that game that was on that evening. So there's no overnight or anything like that. And I remember just couldn't wait for the game to start, like, kept a clean sheet, delighted. Eugene O'Neill, of course, with them wrists, pinged one into the bottom left-hand corners. You'd look into the Davin stand, and we were on our way. And we just dug in. The only major scar, and it was a major scar in that game, was Brian O'Meara obviously getting the red card. I think himself and Mitch Jordan himself and Liam Dunne got sent off. I think Mitch Jordan got sent off slightly after that again then. So look, it was what it was, but losing Brian O'Meara, that game was certainly a very sour taste after the match, even though we had achieved the job we wanted to do.
Yeah, because Tommy, Pat Horan done an interview in the Independent just before the 2009 All Ireland semi-final, and he actually said these two umpires below at Hill 16 said to him at half time, why didn't you come to us? And when he went home that night and he actually saw the match back, he knew that he shouldn't have sent Brian O'Meara and Liam Dunne off.
Yeah, like, wasn't, damage was done. But it was a hard one to swallow. It was a hard one to swallow for, not least for Brian. And it was cruel. It's a cruel feeling. And it definitely took a lot of the enjoyment out of the win for us, to be honest with you. And I remember meeting him later on that night, and it was very hard to see the sadness and the hurt and the disappointment in knowing that he was more than likely not going to play in an All-Ireland final. And
and he was, and I know the boys, Nicky, in fairness to lads, they made the appeal, and fairness to Horn, like, it's lunacy saying that, because he had the chance. If you watched the following day, the appeal was going to go on. He could have easily made a submission. Apparently the suits sat at one end of the table and Brian and our representatives sat on the other, and they just went like the old Roman times. They went, and you can't play in the All-Ireland final. In fairness to Dunne, hatchet man and all as he might have been, and good hurler and all as he might have been, he's an honourable man. And he said it, please don't let this fella lose out in an All-Ireland final over something the two of us, or there was a thing in that. And in fairness to me, he made a huge plea for Brian at the time. I remember hearing that. And but unfortunately it wasn't to be. And like Tommy said, it was a dagger blow for all of us, that one of our brothers, or one of the guys who had been a key part of getting us there, wasn't going to be there on the final game of the year.
Yeah, like the 3 weeks to the All-Ireland, obviously Brian's not going to be playing, but is it hard to try and carry on knowing that he's not going to be playing without sounding selfish?
No, like, listen, like, at the end of the day, you have to drive on. You know what I mean? Like, Brian knew that better than anyone. Like, I mean, there wasn't time for the self-pity job or the poor me job. Like, and Brian O'Mara was never about that, like, in fairness, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it was put to one side, or put to the back of your mind, and it didn't affect. The only effect it had was to actually make the whole group more determined that whatever happened, that we were going to represent Brian with a performance that was worthy. You know what I mean? And that was the overriding thing from my point of view. It actually, you know, there was no way you could go up to an All-Ireland final and not perform, given what had just happened, and given that one of the lads who would have given anything to play in it wasn't going to be allowed play. Like, the team owed him that much, and that was something that was, for me, you know, as captain of the team, really, really important that our performance on the day of the All-Ireland final was going to be representative of the whole group, and particularly Brian, who missed out so cruelly on it. So it was actually a galvanizing thing, and we moved on from it fairly quickly. You know, and I think Brian was actually interviewed before, was it this year's All-Ireland or last year's All-Ireland? And he had some very interesting insights from his point of view on it, in terms of, you know, how he was dealing with it and how he dealt with it with Nicky and his own family. And, you know, he you know, felt he just had to park it, and that it was cruel, but it was the way it had to be.
Yeah, because Brian did say in that interview that the option of a High Court injunction was there, but he didn't want anything interrupting your preparations for the final. He decided himself not to go down that road.
Yeah, and that's the mark of the man that we're talking about, and that's why it was so hurtful to all of the group when he couldn't be with us. And certainly I remember clearly the time talking about the High Court injunction. I think a couple of club players had gotten over suspensions by doing it, and they said, why not couldn't you do it at inter-county level? The money be there, this kind of stuff. But in fairness, no distractions. And Nicky managed it really well as well. Like, if you're dealing with this, as Tommy, you know, dealing with a high-profile team and something goes pear-shaped, it can consume the group with the media jumping all over. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? Because 3 weeks out from All-Ireland, they don't have a major amount to talk about, because the teams aren't really set up. There's only the week before it. But 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, a player being suspended with a chance of getting them back could ruin you. Like, so in fairness, it was managed really well. And Brian himself just showed the character he is, and he just sucked it up for the good of the group, came into us, no sad face. Johnny Lahey was going around the place on crutches. Brian was standing beside him, and they just oozed positivity, and there was never a poor me. And I think that's really helped the group, and that's why they're part of us winning the All-Ireland, not just for what they did to get us to the final, but the way they behaved the weeks before the final and on match day. Yeah,
the build up to the final, Tommy, did you enjoy it?
Did I enjoy? Yeah, it was fine. Like, I don't know, enjoy. It might be a bit strong. I feel like we're enjoying it at the time, but like, sure, like it's like, I suppose, yeah. The answer, in fairness, the answer is yes. I did in a way that, you know, you enjoy it as a sports person, as a hurler, preparing for an All Ireland. Like, sure, you know, the enjoyment is actually living it, isn't it, and being part of it every day. And yeah, I did, and it was. But like all the way through it, like there was just a ferocious focus on the match. You know, I remember that all the time, even to this day. I remember being 100% focused on the game itself all the way through, right from the minute the semi-final replay finished. There was nothing at all that ever shifted my focus from the match itself. And we were busy, you know, there was a lot going on, like, and it's a lot different than the way things are nowadays, because you are like, you know, everyone really has access to you if they want to, you know what I mean? And okay, so there was some stuff that was structured and scheduled, but there was a hell of a lot of stuff that wasn't, that you were, you know, you were doing things that on the outside people would say, geez, what's he doing that for? But that's the way it was in those times. But geez, yeah, it was great. There were great times, like 3 weeks to an All Ireland final, and, you know, getting, you know, looking forward. Like my wife now, Deirdre, was living in New York at the time, and she was going to be coming home for it, and all the stuff that your family gets involved in that makes them happy, and seeing them knocking a kick out of it was powerful. You know what I mean? So I did enjoy the build up, and I definitely did enjoy the build up, I suppose, when you frame it like that. You know, I really did.
Were you based in Kilkenny at the time, Brendan?
No, I was in 2001. I was in Nina.
So you didn't have to deal with it.
Which was 10 years later, or 2010, I suppose 9 years later, I was in Kilkenny for those particular sagas. But we'll talk about that in 8 or 9 years' time. But what you call it? No, I was in Nina, and I used to always leave work at lunchtime. So I left and went back home, and I had my own little routine. Everybody gets out of the house from about 11 o'clock until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I'd have to go for a walk around the same time the match would be on, just to get a feel for what the outside air and all was going to be like and all that. And of course, we went up in the train then before the game on the Saturday. Sorry, we went up in the train. This is on Friday. And Saturday we went up in the train and all. But yeah, it is. You just get the butterflies. You're, like Tommy said, you're all the time fighting with the excitement, like, because you don't want to get excited too much, but yet you want to embrace what's going to happen next and enjoy it. So striking the balance, I suppose, is the absolute key. And that's why I think the older you get in sport, the harder it is to strike that balance, because you see the more things that could go wrong than could go right. So back then I could see nothing, only me bringing off a save in the finish that was going to win the match. And that was all I could see in my head, you know what I mean? And us winning the match. So it's a great freedom in your play. And I think that's the way we played that day. Even though we had a bit of adversity here and there. One thing I do remember clearly is the band. Do you remember the band, Tommy, above before we left the train station in Thurles?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Well, I didn't until you mentioned it, but now I do.
And the other one, do you remember the Nokia phones were out at the time? Do you remember Dara Rabeat, Tip Champions 2001 was flashing in the old Nokia phones with the asterisks beside it. He was handing around. He was texting to the lads. It's the day before the match now. He was some character. I'm right in saying that, aren't I? I'm not. That's not my mind playing tricks.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
freaking band about before you left. Like,
that's Jesus. Right. Just like even the excitement in the train station on the Saturday going up, you know what I mean? It was wonderful. Like, it was absolutely wonderful.
The crowd in Thurles, just to see you off, Tommy, was unbelievable. I remember. Yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. But listen, I keep saying this even to this day. And it's something you see. It's different when you're playing than because you're in your own bubble. But like when you step outside of that bubble for a second and realize actually what it means to people, the supporters, and then that's a real eye opener for me. I'll be honest with you. It's a real eye opener, and still is. It always, still to this day, it kind of shocks me that hurling and Tipperary hurling can mean so much to Tipperary people. I'm still blown away by that. Like, I remember on the Saturday early on the Saturday before the match, before I went into the train station, my mother and father, they were leaving to go to Dublin, and they were leaving before me, and I was living at home at the time, and the time came for them. I was inside watching sport or something, and they were getting up to go, and they were crying, right? And I went out to the door with them. They were crying, both of them, and could barely talk. And like, I don't know, we shook hands and hugged. Like, we didn't hug our mother or father or shit. Like, we didn't do any of that stuff in those times. We didn't show any sort of emotion. And it's like, I just closed the door. The first thing I said, well, thank God they're gone, number one, right? So it was like, it was crazy. But then when I thought of it after, I was thinking, like, well, my father, what has he seen in his 50 or 60 years at that stage? And my mother, and they've all the ups and downs that sport brings, you know, when your son is playing, and the stuff they had to listen to, the bad stuff and the good stuff and the disappointments and all the rest of it. And you think about that just for a second, and you say, okay, I get a small piece of that now. It's different for me. I'm in full control of what's going on. I'm playing. I know what I've done. I know I'm ready to go. And that's the other thing. I said to me dad on the way out, I said, don't worry. I said, don't be worried. Don't be worried. Mm-hmm. But like, it's easy for me to say it.
Yeah, and obviously getting to Dublin, Brendan, on the Saturday evening, how does one put down a night the night before the All Ireland? Like, it's all right for us in Ryans on Camden Street.
Yeah, you just need to get into a room with Larry Corbett for about a half an hour, and then you get the next 4 hours wondering what went on. I think it's the best way of explaining it. It is, you have your cliques. I think it was Jury's Balls Bridge or in, and we used to go to the top floor there to get our bite to eat there, and you'd be able to walk out around the terrace there, and Hot Point would give us a few hurling balls, and we'd lash a few balls out over the top of the houses there and wait to see could you hear a bang and stuff like that. And, you know, whatever it took to kind of to have the bit of a crack. So it's amazing when you get into a group of like-minded people who all know they're ready and all have the crack with a confidence and an air that the work is done. And I mean, there's a huge comfort to that. I used to love meeting up with the lads. Like, there was a crowd, there was a band at the station. That didn't freak me out at all, because everywhere I looked fellas in the eye, and I knew there was a composure and a calmness behind those eyes that said we're ready. And we used to have the crack and the laugh. We'd hurl a few balls up along the corridor, things like that. It was just simple enough stuff. I think a couple of lads watched up for the match maybe and things like that, just for the crack. You know, so there was a bit of that going on. And I can't actually, would you believe, I can't remember who I was rooming with at the time even. Now, that's to tell you, I can, unless Tommy can help me on that one.
No, I don't remember who you were rooming, but I roomed with Conor Gleeson. I kind of roomed with him all along, and we'd you know, we weren't probably the greatest crack in the world, but like we were grand. But you know what I remember, funnily enough, I remember having a meal that evening. We were all in at the meal, but there was a television in the room where we had our meal, I think, and I think the Premier League had started that weekend, the first weekend of the Premier League, and the Premier League was on the Saturday night Premier League show, if it was even the Premier League at that stage. I don't know what it was, right? But you know who was doing the analysis on the Premier League show that night? Well, you won't believe this. I remember this. It was Bertie Ahern, right? He was a soccer pundit on the Saturday night Premier League show of match of the day equivalent or something like that. And I always remember, I think it was watching United with you actually, and we were having the crack over the Man United game, and we're slagging, what the hell is Bertie Ahern doing the I remember that. That's the only thing I remember much about the Saturday night. And I remember meeting a few people down in the lobby, which was really special as well. You know what I mean? It was lovely to meet just a few people up from home and cousins and things like that. It was nice.
Yeah, I suppose going on to the match, Tommy, and obviously you got off to a great start. That score underneath the Cusick stand. I'd say you never hit a ball as sweet as what you did with that.
Yeah, it was good. Of all the things over the years hurling with Tip, that's the one that people seem to remember it, which is amazing. But like it was brilliant. Yeah, it was brilliant. I struck it on the money. And actually, only Nicky said it to me there one day last year. You know, what we were talking about. There was a picture of it somewhere because Nicky has his hand up. The sun is into his eyes or something. And he said, you hit that ball very near me. He says, I never saw the ball because the sun was so strong. He said, but I knew it was good because I heard the sound of it. So, but to be honest with you, that day it was one of the, I have a thing about ball striking. Brendan will probably know this. Like ball striking to me is one of the most important things of being a hurler. And I struck the ball. I couldn't have struck the ball much better that day, to be honest with you. I was delighted with it.
Yeah, and obviously Brendan, Owen got another point straight after it from a free, and it kind of laid the foundations for the day. You were always 2 or 3 points up, but Galway hit some awful wides in them first 20 minutes as well. Like Alan Kearns, Fergal Healy, Richie Murray, all had great chances.
Yeah, they did, and I think if you think about our path up along, we like the Munster final, especially. You spoke about the strike rate we had early days on it, and we had that bit of composure. And you know, the ebb and flow of the game is always going to be the other crowd are going to get their purple patch. I think Eugene Cloonan got the goal. I stopped one, but the sun. I remember the first ball coming in, and I lost it. I remember saying to Philly, I can't see it, and then eventually it came out of the sun. And I was able to catch it or break it down or whatever and get a clearance on it. But it's like every day of an All-Ireland final. You remember as well, there was no Hogan stand. That's why Nicky was so close to Tommy. They were all over the Cusick stand side, the mentors. So it was surreal, because you had 2/3 of the horseshoe, there, the Hogan stand was under construction. So it was a bit surreal as well. But it was, look, I suppose the sun was a big factor. I certainly felt when I went onto the pitch first, I had a hat on, then I threw it off, put it on again, threw it off. You wouldn't know what you'd be doing half the time with it. So, yeah, but Galway did get their purple patch. They got their goal, but I just felt that the very minute Tommy hit that ball over the bar, I don't know what it was in the first minute or two, I just thought, we're on our way here. It's as simple as that. We're not going to be bet. Full stop, statement made. Just throw what you like at us and we'll just come back swinging again. And that's the sensation that I suppose when someone does as inspirational as that, like Tommy did that day, it seems simple now to say I just flicked it over the bar or a sweet strike, but Jesus, it just pinged over the bar. And it wasn't a Newry hurling ball either, was it?
No. Well, it's funny. I suppose I shouldn't have really been going for a score from there at all if right was right. But it just felt the right thing to do at the time. I got past your man, and I knew I had time to strike it. And at some I'm happy enough to strike off my left. And sometimes the further out to the side from the goals you are, the way I strike on my left, the better. So there was a big curl on the end of it. And I knew I had the distance, so it worked out. It worked out lovely, and it settled me down, and it settled us down because a few minutes had passed. I think there was no score in the game, and so the longer it went without either team scoring, it turned out the first score was going to be a nice one to get to settle it, and did. We had a good start. We had a good first half in that game. Bit ropey just before half time. All right, definitely. But in the main, we had a good first 20 or 30 minutes is generally my recollection of it. Now, we weren't comfortable or anything like that. The game was still tight, but we were hurling okay.
Yeah, because Brendan, the free from Mark O'Leary's first goal, Joe Rabbit got done for over-carrying, and Paul Arman, I remember, was bottling them up. But that was a right tussle between them two that day.
It was, and I think in fairness, Nicky had a great way of taking the pressure off you. Like he would have said to us in the build-up to that game, Rabbit is going to catch the ball. It's going to happen. Don't worry about it. Don't panic. When he comes down, he still has to hit it. And that's the way we managed him throughout the game. When he came down with the ball in his hand, nobody panicked because we said, right, he's going to catch it. He's very good in the air, but he's not going to hit it. And that's what we were able to do. And Ormond and everyone who went on to Cork and all the lads, they were all able to manage him, knowing that when he came down, that's when your work started rather than trying to beat him in the air. So there was never a panic. There was a composure to what we were trying to do. And certainly, yeah, that again came through in the 1-3, which when I opened my eyes was landing on the 21, and Mark O'Leary kicked it from about 30 yards out, whatever, and it bobbled all the way in. So that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I suppose, Tommy, Declan Ryan, when he laying off that ball to Mark O'Leary, it was a stroke of genius, really. Like, not too many people would have seen him coming off his shoulder like that.
Yeah, it was lovely. Like they executed, they made it look simple there between the catch, the offload, and the finish. Like it was class goal, in fairness. So, but Declan had a great way of bringing people into the game, and Declan actually had a great All Ireland final. He was really in full flow there, right throughout the game, and caused Galway a lot of problems. And we were fairly direct that day. Now we had a lot of balls went straight down to the full forward line, in fairness, and we got a good dividend out of it, in fairness, and it was a nice breeze in it as well on the day. So, but he was, he had a fair height advantage on Michael Healy, and it definitely worked in our favour. But Mark, Mark had a great final as well, but that's kind of like we heard. Generally speaking, I thought we heard a fairly solid game. Throughout. I do remember a little wobbly before halftime. I don't know if Brendan's recollection is the same. And obviously Brendan had a central role in the outcome, with an unbelievable save from Broderick in a 1-on-1 at a real midway point in the second half. That was as much of a turning point as anything else in the game, in fairness, and it went our way, So, but in the main. Our subs were good as well, I think, that day. Paddy O'Brien came on, hit a lovely point, and I think Micheál Ryan came on for Paul late in the game. Gleeson came on, and Micheál wasn't on the field 30 seconds, and he had snapped the puck out and back down the field again. So that, all those things in a tight game were vital, like.
Yeah, and I think I remember you talk about it being hot, Tommy. I remember coming off the pitch at half time. I was met first by John Lahey asking me what was I doing the puck outs. Then I was met by you with the eyes dancing in your head saying, give me your puck out, give me the puck out. But what I will say is that's the way we rolled with that group. We demanded from each other, like. And I remember sitting down in the dressing room at half time looking over at you going, I'll tell you now, the second half, you're getting the fucking puck out whether you like it or not. Yeah. And I remember about 4 or 5 minutes in.
Time, in fairness to you.
Yeah. And I hit it down around your ankles because I was such a temper. I hit it between the eyes. It went to your ankles. And he first touched into his hand, cleared it, and he turned around and he went like that to me. And I went, oh, jeez.
It was 2 or 3 touches now.
No, but it was. But that's the way we worked. We were demanding of each other. That dressing room, like, it wasn't always a bed of roses. Because the standards were demanded, but we never took it personal. We always took it as developing and demanding more. And that was a key part too, Tommy, I think, of that team's progression to the 3-year part, because we all had a piece taken out of us by each other at some stage along the line, but we took in the spirit it was meant and we grew from it. Like.
Yeah, no, I'd certainly agree with that. Like, the profile of the team was mature. You know what I mean? The time for dancing around things had kind of passed, and we were able to challenge each other without going over the top, like, in fairness. That I definitely agree with that, and I think it was a feature of that team, and it was a feature of the way we were managed as well. Like, if Nicky had a problem, you'd get it between the 2 eyes, you know what I mean, and you had to deal with it. And it might have knocked you for 6 initially, but when it settled, it was powerful, you know what I mean? And I think there was very few in that room that didn't get that kind of treatment at the appropriate time. But, like, I couldn't agree with you more. It was a very strong feature of that team, that maturity of not wasting each other's time and demanding from each other what we knew was in each other, if you know what I'm saying. And I think that was the key, and we were able to get it out of each other that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously Galway got the last 4 points of the first half to bring it back to 2. But Mark O'Leary got the goal at the start of the second half. He couldn't have got off to a better start. Declan Ryan got the point then straight after it. I think the umpire got turned upside down, getting tangled up in the fence, and Declan had a chance to finish it off just after that. But no, Declan misses it. You leave the supporters sweating again.
Yeah, well, it was never going to be a procession for you, like, in case you thought you were going to get out a quarter of an hour early to the big tree or somewhere like that. That wasn't going to happen.
I think was Declan trying to do both umpires or something that day?
You may interrogate him yourself about that one.
Yeah, and you better do it over this medium, because I wouldn't be saying that close to his face, I'll tell you that much.
But like obviously that kept Galway in it, and Broderick took the fight to Tipton in the last half an hour. He was all over the place.
Yeah, I know they were like they were, you know, they were never out of the game. You know what I mean? Like Broderick was one of the top forwards in the game at that stage, and like you couldn't take your eyes off him. You know, and the thing about it was they were always well in the game. And like I say, like, you know, that save turned out to be crucial. They were very much in the game. So like it was definitely all to play for. It was definitely all to play for. So, but at the same time, you know, we did threaten most of the time when we went down to attack them. We did threaten them a fair bit, in fairness. So, and you know, when Brendan pulled off that, like, we were still very much in the driving seat, in fairness.
Yeah, because like Fergal Horgan got the goal, whizzed past you, Brendan, and you certainly looked under pressure at that stage. It was back to a point.
Yeah, but you get into a habit of winning tight matches. I mean, it's something like you always talk about this X factor, or you can't put your finger on it, and it's very hard. But we were in that zone where you just I couldn't see us getting bet. Like, we'll find a way. There will be a way somewhere. Someone will do something. Larry or Jono or whoever is going to do something. Declan, Mark O'Leary that day really stepped up. Like, you know, the lads who came on. So it was only a matter of, they got a goal, grand, pick it out, puck it out, we'll get another couple of scores up the other. And we're used to winning matches by a point. So what? Like, if that's the way it has to be, that's the way it has to be. And I suppose over a course of 6 or 7 months with the 2 years preparation before that, it just comes to a point where you say to yourself that I'm ready to win. And I had that sensation getting on the train. I had that sensation in the last 10 minutes of the match. And I certainly had that sensation when I knew it was the last puck out. So that's just the way it was. It's not being cocky or arrogant. It's just a belief that you have as a sports person that the work is done and it's time now to win something. Yeah,
because straight after the goal, Tommy, like Mark O'Leary wins a free and Owen puts it over the bar, and then O'Leary gets that super point underneath the Cusick stand. So that was the sign of every time Galway came at you, you came back and got 2 or 3 more scores.
Yeah, no, 100%. But like Brendan is right. Like, he keeps reminding us of it there. Like, look at the games we had won that year with tight margins. So, you know, we were fine. We were fine in terms of composure, and we were able to answer them when they threatened, in fairness. So there was, you know, like, we ended up winning the game by 3 points, even though they had it pulled back to 1, and I don't think they went ahead of us. You know what I mean? So, you know, but that the team was in a good place, you know, all through, and that, you know, that's when the pressure comes on, you really find out about where the team is at, and all through the year, the team stood up when the pressure came on, and that was, you know, that comes from being on the journey for a while, and through experience, and through belief and trust in one another, and through suffering together, and going through some fairly tough times, and questioning yourself and all that thing. And then you had that factor behind us as well, where Brian wasn't involved, and like, there was no way that match could have been let go by us, like, just no way, unless something extraordinary happened. So we had all that. I remember at halftime that day, and I might even have said it, like, which, you know, no one really spoke that much in the dressing room in those days, other than the manager. But a few words came out of my mouth at halftime that day, and it was along the lines of, no way are we losing this today? Like that we'd waited so long. There was just that feeling in the team that the time had come to actually just once and for all win our All Ireland and be done with it. You know what I mean? And we were, and you saw that in the performances. Like you saw that from the goalkeeper right the way through. You know, when they were asked to do something, when the pressure came on, it was done. You know, some tip player did something that was needed to be done at a given moment, right throughout that time, whether it was Brendan making the saves, or Corcoran, or Ormond, or Kennedy, or Mark, or Declan. You know, everyone had something positive to do in that match that was significant. You know what I mean? And there was some really, really strong performances in that match.
Yeah, because Brendan, as Tommy said there, everybody had their own part to play, and 3 points up, a few minutes to go, and Broderick comes straight through. It's your time to shine.
Yeah, I don't know. He just, when he got it, I remember it was always the thing I suppose I had is that I always kept my feet moving to come out to the forward. Don't just come out and stand, get as close as you can so that your shoulders or get your breast bone in between, get the ball in line with that to be harder to get the angle past you. So, yeah, and I came out, I just made sure it hit off my chest. And I remember, I think it was Paul Ormond then came in behind me and swept it up and away she went. But yeah, there's moments like that. It wasn't as big a deal maybe in my head because, look, when he came through, once I smothered him that quick, that was that, like, you know what I mean? Getting out there was the trick. And once I got in there quick enough, he was never going to get a goal from that stage. But yeah, like Tommy said, everyone had their part to play in the whole thing, and that was just my time, and it just it happened to work out. It happened to work out okay. Be terrible to concede 3 goals, like, you know what I mean? That wouldn't be great.
Yeah, it was like obviously Paddy O'Brien put you 4 points up, and going into injury time, what a lot of people forget is Ollie Fahy was only after coming on. I think time was up, and he actually clipped David Kennedy as Kevin Broderick was going through. Now, Broderick ended up at the bottom of the net, but the free was given out. I remember Galway were going mad over it, like, but it was a free.
Yeah, I remember hearing the whistle, yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's like, it's fine margins, you know what I mean, and like that's why sport is so cruel, you know. Like, and there was plenty of times we were at the wrong end of one of those decisions. So they're the things that you can't control, you know what I mean. You have no control over whether that happens on for you or against you. All you can do is deal with it one way or the other. And you know what? If it had to go in, given the fellas that were involved, I'd have backed us to try and recover from it. You know, given that it was a tight situation, but like there was no go back in that team from shirking responsibility. Anyway, that's one thing for sure and certain.
Yeah, and Brendan, obviously, you the last puck, just like in 2010, 9 years later.
Yeah, it was. Look, the umpires are sound, and I remember saying, "Is this it?" And the umpires, I was looking for the hurleys there to see which one I was going to take my last puck out to win an All Ireland final with. So that was a great sensation. Like I said, the umpires, "This is," and he said, "Yeah, he's calling for the ball." And I took a couple of breaths, even had a little look around, gave the whole 9 yards now, like I did in 2010. I said, "This is it now. You may never again get this chance, so make the most of it." And I certainly did, you know. I took the extra couple of deep breaths. But as the ball was in the air and it fell, I think one of the Galway lads in the middle of the field got it and went, "Oh, Jesus, don't tell me now he's not going to blow it up." But then the hands went wide, and that was that. So, and I think then I was swamped by Philly Maher, and I think Nicky came in then and knocked all of us as well. It was a kind of signal the way the year went for us that we were always having in the last dying minutes, Nicky used to always be down with the backs because his heart was in his mouth, even though we felt completely composed. After the Munster final, Nicky was the first person I met, and after the All Ireland final, he was the second person I met. So it was
there's a great picture. I don't know where I saw it. It's a great picture of Nicky and you and Ormond. And
I have it.
Stadium of Croke Park. It's a wonderful picture. Like, it's seconds after the whistle, I'd say.
Yeah, the hurley out is, but I mean, like, it's very hard to put into words when it was our first certainly my first All Ireland. I like more than, I think Tommy's your first as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
Like,
no, we obviously played in '97, but like, I mean, sure, it was a huge breakthrough. Like I was 27 on the panel since I was 18. So it was a big day.
I think in 2000 they brought out a team after the All Ireland final of the players who had never won an All Ireland, and I was on it. And I remember cutting that out and I put it into my gear bag. I said, by hell or high water, that has to finish. Like, I have to get off that team. It's as simple as that. Like, and like that, those little things along the way give you that extra bit of motivation or drive or X factor, whatever you want to call it. And certainly to put that one to bed was great as a sports person. Then you see your family, what it means to them afterwards is a different thing again, a different emotion. But as a sports person, for me afterwards, I just thought, I'm not that team anymore. So that's good news.
There's actually a lovely picture as well after it with Paul Armand with the Lockmore crew, and there's a young Noel and John McGrath in the photo. Sure, look what they came on to go to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the other thing sometimes that you maybe don't realise, that the imprint it leaves on youngsters. So if you go back to your own childhood and the day, for me, like, it was seeing Tip win in Killarney, like was a huge memory for a want-to-be young Tipperary hurler. You know what I mean? So isn't that lovely to see that with Noel and John and the Lockmore contingent, and what they went on to be afterwards. Like, so that's lovely, yeah.
Yeah, and Seamus Hennessy came with us to Cape Town.
That's right, yeah.
And he ended up playing Ireland. He came on the All Ireland final with us then in 2000.
Only 9 years later, then he's winning one. Like, yeah, that's brilliant.
And he's coming on and made a huge contribution. So it is, and I think that's why it's important in Tipperary when you are at the elite level that you win, not just for your own self or for your family and for the group you're with, but for the tradition of making sure every generation keeps seeing Tipperary winning, so that the fire is lit in them to say that I want to do that and I want to be that. And countless photographs throughout the years will have players who were in them as kids then producing it, and when it came to being their time, but they couldn't have produced unless they saw somebody else doing it first. And they go about it a different way, a more extravagant way these days when you watch Noel McGrath looking one way and hitting it the other, that kind of stuff, but they will find a way. And that's why it's important that the legacy continues. When you wear the blue and gold, you must try to win, not for yourself or the group, but for certainly the generations to come ahead of you.
Yeah, and obviously the celebrations in Burlington that night when getting back to Thurles on the Monday evening. But the one thing I remember, and I remember watching it there for years, and All Ireland winning captains going to small villages, and I always wondered, would it ever happen in Thurles? And the Monday night in Tommy, that was obviously special. I remember, like, obviously Barry and Penny were in school with me, and they were across from me and your mother, and I never seen anybody as proud when you walked off that bus in Tommy that night.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like, well, sure, it's an incredible thing, Tomas. Like, you kind of never really think it could happen to you, and then all of a sudden it does. And you're just like, the thing is, I remember you're trying to take it all in. I remember those, from the minute the whistle blew in the match, not wanting to miss anything, not wanting to forget anything, wanting to really embrace and experience this, like, because it's so unbelievable, and it was like that in Toom. The crowds and the welcome we got was crazy, and the effort people made to get there, and the effort the club made to they brought in some kind of a hoist, into the yard beside the church, and they brought me back in, let the rest of the boys up onto the lorry, and then the spotlight was on this, like, it was like some sort of telescopic Manitou kind of makeshift digger that was like 20 or 30 or 40 feet up in the sky. You're like, it's like what's going on here? But it was phenomenal. And, you know, for like at the end of the day, it's a community, even though it's the county team, but it comes back to communities, you know what I mean? And Toomevara is just another community that we're so proud to receive, to have a Tipperary captain and receive the whole Tipperary team. And it was lovely. You know, like it felt so special that all the team were there in my own home place celebrating with the people of Toomevara and the wider communities around. Like it was so special to have your friends come back to your home place with you, with you know, on a really happy occasion like this. It was incredible. I'll never forget it. Like, and they're unforgettable experiences, and I consider myself extremely fortunate to have had it, and be forever grateful for the whole thing. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And you know, I still struggle to describe the happiness and just the emotion that was wrapped up in it for me and for my family.
Yeah, and obviously, like the pubs wouldn't be the biggest in town, and the crowds on the street, like the Jug of Punch was there at the time. I think it's a pharmacy or something now, and even going into early Tuesday morning, there was still an unbelievable crowd in it. Yeah,
and you won't believe this, but I didn't set foot in a pub in Toon that night. That is a fact. Like just being around, and you know, I remember meeting, and Brendan will know this as well. Like meeting people in the crowd afterwards, and one of the first people I met was George Friend, right? Who, you know, was a colleague and a friend of mine in Toom, and played for Tip for a number of years. And like I only thought of this the other day driving through Toom. I can still remember the spot where I met him, and what it meant, and feeling almost sad that George wasn't part of it, because he'd been such a wonderful Tip player for years. You know what I mean? So you have all these things that you remember around that time, but the overwhelming, and again, it goes back to what it actually means to people. And I know this now because I'm at the other side of it now. And well, you know, for a few years when I wasn't involved coaching, but when you're going to Tipperary matches as a supporter, and you get a flavour for what's it like, and say the 2009 and 2010, going to the match as a Tipperary supporter, and actually really feeling what the supporter feels in big matches. And 2009, 2000, I know this isn't the night to be talking about them, but there will be a time which will be powerful. And the emotion involved in seeing Tip playing an All Ireland final against big rivals and playing well, you know what I mean? So like that's all captured, and it was captured, I suppose, really well that you know, in the aftermath of 2001, because it had been 10 years since Tip won it, which was a fair gap, you know, and it meant so much to us all who had been there for a good few years. Like,
yeah, and Brendan, just touching on the following year, then obviously you were flying it, and Waterford caught you in the Munster final, and obviously Nicky stepping down, he'd given 4 years, but do you think Nicky going was something like what Liam Sheedy was leaving in 2010?
Yeah, there was. I wouldn't say as dramatic as Liam leaving in 2010, to be honest with you, because Liam leaving in 2010 was a real bolt out of the blue. We were actually watching we thought that the bowl Damon O'Shea was going to bolt, not Liam. But anyway, but no, it wasn't. I think Nicky had given everything he had to Tip, and Tommy will tell you, like, at the level Nicky took it to, he took professional management. Like, you know, we're talking all the one-to-ones he did with us every couple of weeks. Like he was nearly your guardian angel going around the place, somebody who would tell you it straight, but also you knew that in any kind of scrape he'd have your back. So like he invested some load of time into us. And I just think with the job he had, I think with AIB at the time and all that, it just became too much of I suppose too much of his time had to go to work and couldn't dedicate. And Nicky's somebody that if he couldn't give 100%, he just wasn't going to be part of it. And he just felt it was time for change. I wouldn't have agreed at the time, because when Nicky God's in charge, you'd have him there forever. But it just seemed to be the natural thing that he was going to move on. And but even to this day, though, you'd still be unbelievably grateful, not just for the hurling lessons that I'd have gotten from Nicky, but the lessons in life. And the way he conducted himself around the team. Even teams I've been involved with now, I call on some of the things that Nicky would have done, or the eyes, you try to look through his eyes a little bit as to what would he do in this situation. Because Tommy will tell you learn so much from someone like him. Well, remember, we had no hurling coach, you know what I mean? Nicky was doing the coaching kind of bit as well. He was doing the whole 9 yards, so it wasn't that you delegated out all the jobs as manager. You were chief bottle washer and did the whole lot,
Yeah, I suppose, Tommy, having somebody like your hero training you and being over you must have been a great help. So you're obviously soaking in everything he's telling you.
Yeah, no, well, for me, he was the person who taught me how to be an inter-county player, really. He taught me how to train like an inter-county player, and he taught me how to think like an inter-county player. And as Brendan said, he taught me how to embrace, and he actually taught me what being a Tipperary hurler actually involved. Do you know what I mean? And I had no comprehension of that, even up to 99. Only up until 99, when he came in, did I get a proper insight into what an inter-county player was required to have vis-a-vis physical, mental, in particular. They were the things. I was way off the mark until he came around the place, and Brendan, plus all the other stuff that we picked up from just being around him, and the way he handled himself in certain situations, and the way he handled a big group of players. It was incredible, and learned, and I would be the very same with Brendan. I still have some of those lessons with me, and I'm fortunate to be able to use them all the time, because even though the game has changed in some aspects of the game haven't changed and will never change, and I think they're the things that I'm really, really grateful for, that I'm still able to acknowledge and understand.
And there was obviously a lot of good characters around that team.
Yeah, we had some brilliant people in the setup. Obviously, Nicky, we had Jack Bergen and Ken Hogan on the management team, which were great servants of Tipperary hurling in their playing days. And we had Pauline Fanning, and
Jerry O'Sullivan, the doc.
Yeah, Jerry O'Sullivan, the doc, absolutely. We were well, as Brendan alluded to earlier, Nicky was able to take things up to a real significant level in terms of all kinds of our preparation. And we had myself and a couple of other guys, used to avail of a physio, a good friend of ours, and remains a good friend in Tala in Dublin there, called Alan Kelly, or the Great AK, as is his correct title. And AK was an inspirational character, and anyone knows him to this day, and he's still an inspirational character. And we were blessed to have him, and got us out of many tricky situations with regard to injury. And as much as a sort of a psychologist, really, as he was a physio, and really had a way of getting into your head to make you feel really good about yourself. I remember often taking a half day from work and driving up to Tala to get my ankle looked at, usually, but a lot of the time there wouldn't be much wrong with the ankle. You just needed an injection of positivity and confidence. And I remember one time around 2001 coming up to the National League semi-final and National League final, and there was a big article in the Irish Independent about me being dropped, because I wasn't really firing on all cylinders, and probably had a couple of dodgy games. And there was a big article in the Independent that kind of stomached me a bit, you know. So I was inside in AK's up on the bench with him anyway, and he's digging into my ankle, and he brings up the article in the Independent. And at that stage, he was well involved with rugby. He was well connected in rugby circles. He was looking after some of the Leinster players, and he had pictures of Brian O'Driscoll up and Gordon Darcy and all this. He liked, you know, throwing names around, but they actually were coming to him. Like, he wasn't messing, like he was looking after these guys. And he said, you can't drop the captain. He said, what kind of nonsense is this? You don't drop the captain, he said. And he made it sound so normal. Like, what in the name of God are they thinking about dropping you for? You're the fucking best player they have. How could they be thinking of dropping you? And like, I came out of there a different man, an absolutely different man. And like, there was loads of lads that would always slagging him about this and different things, but he was a wonderful for me anyway, was a wonderful guy to be around. And I never came out of there feeling good about myself, because he made you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, he's that, like, there's no doubt about it. AK, like, I mean, he just listen to his answer machine. You've reached the machine, you know the routine. After the tone, you're on your own, then you get the beat. For me, he was come to me for matches. You've got to catch a point today. No one's ever caught a point before. You have to catch a point today. It have to be, you know. And I go, yeah, do you know what? I will. And it's just, there's certain energy of people in this world. And he has it, whatever it is, I don't know, but he has it, and the energy he had. And I was never really up the table with him. I didn't have a massive, like, I wouldn't be interacting with as much as Tommy, but he just knew to come over to you, and he knew what to say at the right pitch and tone to light you up. And by Jesus, I gave a lot of matches to catch a point so I could show AK I was able to do it. Like, it's just mad. What a man. And Peter Murchan as well, was on that group, and only for Peter, I wouldn't have been around in 2001 with the operation I had in my leg. He fixed that. So Nicky, again, he's genius. He had people who were the top of their field involved with the group, and Peter Murchan was another one of them, our team surgeon. I mean, I don't know how many teams had a team surgeon at that stage in 2001 or 99, 2000, 2001. We had one. You know, again, another skill that Nicky had to get the right people in the right slots.
Yeah.
But AK
and
was
Hot Point. I know you mentioned Hot Point earlier. Hot Point was central to all our requirements in those times. Like, he was a wonderful man in the setup as well. And, you know, when Hot Point was around, you knew any little bit of an issue that came up would be sorted out. Like, he was a brilliant guy, doing a really unselfish job, and a guy that absolutely loved Tipperary with all his heart. He was. It's hard to put into words the contribution the likes of the Hot Points make around the team, you know what I mean, until you see him actually doing what he's doing.
I think it sums up Hot Point. If you look at the final whistle in the Munster final, or in the game against Clare, went down to the death, Hot Point runs onto the pitch to Paul Kelly. He gives him a hug, and then he takes his hurley off him, so he could celebrate and have his hurley for the next night in training. So whenever you met Hot Point after the match, give me a hurley. He'd give you the hug. Well done. Now give me the hurley, because you need it the next day. So it's not robbed, it's not stolen. I'll mind it. You go and enjoy yourself there, but you'll need this again next week. And he was always thinking like that. So that's the man.
Yeah, just one thing on Hot Point there, now that you mentioned him, and when we were going back on the 91 team, and the madness with the fans coming in off the fence and that, and the Munster final, and Hot Point was running in with a manure bag full of hurleys to collect hurleys off players.
Yeah, that's him, but
brilliant.
Yeah, class.
Super.
Yeah, just one quick question, Tommy. Obviously, we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of 2001. Will we be putting another programme together for a 20th anniversary in 20 years' time?
Well, I sincerely hope so. I'm sure there's no reason to think that we won't. I like, you know, God knows what I'll look like at that stage, but you'll probably have someone else on for that particular show tomorrow. But yeah, like, be very positive about the 20th anniversary. 20 years. 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 20 the the year coming up and the next couple of years, to be honest with you. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't be positive. A lot of work to do to get back to the top, but definitely still have a great playing group, and hopefully we'll know soon. It would help if we knew what sort of a year we were going to be facing into. But doing, even at the moment, doing a lot of good work in restricted circumstances, and getting great engagement from players in really tough environment to prepare. But couldn't speak highly enough of them at the moment anyway. So you're just really hoping and waiting that to hear what the year is going to look like.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll know fairly soon. Tommy, Brendan, it's been an absolute pleasure going down memory lane with you, and I hope to talk to you again very soon. Thanks very much for being on the show.
You're welcome, Tomas. It was nice to be here.
What a job.
Well, Sean, some great stories there.
Yeah, great stories there. Listen to the two boys, and as we said at the start, that it's going to be interesting to hear what their take of the story was from that year. And yeah, it was very interesting to hear, and it makes looking back at the matches more interesting now to hear what their mindset was going into them games. Yeah,
because I suppose, like, just talking to a lot of people there that would have listened to the show last week, and they said that they wouldn't have really remembered some of the matches, but they actually look back on them on YouTube and that now, and GA now to jog the memory. But obviously getting the players' perspective of it, it's completely different, like, to see what it takes to win an All Ireland.
Yeah, that's it. That's the thing. It just shows, like, even from the first day out against Clare and the Munster Championship, it's the mindset going out to that. It really set the tone for the year, and you could just see it in the games. Like, the attitude was all right and everything, and like hearing Tommy talking about what he was like as captain's role, it just really just sums up how they got the clean slate that year with their league, Munster and All Ireland. So you can see now why they hurled so well that year, is because their mindset was all right.
Yeah, and obviously they're saying that they were, same as Nicky, I suppose, happy to get out the first day at Wexford with a draw, and more or less same as what Nicky said, going back to juries and having that meeting and doing the recovery straight after it, more or less set the tone for the replay and drove them on to win the All Ireland. Yeah, it did. It really set the tone, like, because I said it was kind of a shock to them that the Wexford came back so strong in the first game. As I said, they were lucky to come out of the game with a draw. They were, like, as Nicky said, he was in the air last week's show. He was hoping for the whistle to be blown up. So yeah, it was just the recovery straight away after the game. It really helped them, and then really fresh coming into the replay, and then going through Wexford and then going on to Galway then in the final. It really just summed up, like, what the attitude of the management and the attitude of the players was all about. Yeah, and to just talk about the homecoming there, and Tommy mentioning how special it was to bring it back to Tommyvara. So it was one thing bringing it back to Thurles, but when you're bringing it back to your home village, it's a completely different thing. Yeah, absolutely. It was like Shamey 2 years back, like, the emotion of him bringing it back to his own club is completely different to bringing it back to the Thurles. Like, bringing it back to the Thurles, the stadium is one thing, but bringing it back to the field where you started out playing is a completely different emotion. And like Tommy, you could see why Tommy was, like, so happy to bring it back, because, like, it's where he started out his hurling career in Tommyvara, and to bring the best prize of them all back to the parish, it's just such a happy feeling for him. Yeah, and like he said there, he mentioned George Friend would have soldiered with Tommyvara, and he soldiered with Tip there for a few years previous, and meeting him in Tommyvara that night, he said it was special, like, but he didn't forget the people who soldiered with him before he won this, and to make it a reality for him. Yeah, that's just how good hurling is. Like, they always remember. They always remember, like, the people that soldiered on with, like George Friend for Tommy and all these, like,
did never forget him. And it just shows up like what a lot meant to Tommy, like me and the likes of George after the final into Umivara with the cup. It's really a special moment for him.
Yeah, well, hopefully there'll be plenty more of them to come. And as he said, that if they can get back training now as soon as possible this year, we could be putting another show together in 20 years' time, celebrating another 20 years.
Definitely, yeah. The signs are looking up, so we should be back training shortly. And hopefully, we've been waiting less than 20 years to bring back a cup again. So all is good. So
Tipperary GA was in mourning this week with the news of the passing of former Tipperary and Kilruane McDonough's player Tom Mallochny. Tom won All Ireland senior medals in 1961 and 62. In addition, he won 3 Munster, 2 National League and 2 Oireachtas medals. He was a senior selector with Tipperary in 1980 and filled the same role with Kilruane McDonough's senior team that won a hat-trick of North and County titles between 1977 and 71. We also remember Paddy Kelly, life president of Killadangan GA Club, who also sadly passed away this week. May they rest in peace. Well, that's it for another show. Thanks to Tommy Dunne and Brendan Cummins for going down memory lane with us. It really was enjoyable listening to their stories, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If there's any particular memory you'd like us to feature on the show, drop us a message on any of our social media channels or email us at contactckstreaming@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and follow our social media channels and subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date with all upcoming shows. It's free, so it won't cost you anything. Make sure to like and share our show and drop us a comment with some feedback. Good luck, take care, and we'll talk to you all very soon.